Night Tide was directed by Curtis Harrington and stars Dennis Hopper as Johnny Drake, a sailor visiting a pier while on shore leave. Johnny meets a mysterious woman named Mora. Mora works at the carnival on the pier. Her job is to dress up and pretend to be a mermaid. When Johnny continues to date Mora, he starts to learn about two of her other boyfriends, who died and were supposedly murdered by Mora. Everyone keeps telling Johnny that Mora is trouble. Mora herself even claims that she's a siren, a killer mermaid. Johnny, however, remains infatuated with Mora. Is everyone full of nonsense? Or is Mora really a mermaid and is Johnny really in danger? That's what you find out when you watch Night Tide. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to my Halloween series. We're gonna talk about horror films for all of October. So get some popcorn, put on your spooky Halloween costume, and hold on to your copy of Pan's Labyrinth for dear life. Because we're talking Halloween horror, starting with Night Tide. Night Tide is a very underrated movie. I can guarantee a good majority of the people watching this video have never even heard of this movie, even though the leading role is played by Dennis Hopper. This movie has 7 total critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and only 6 of them are positive, which isn't that much considering that usually a movie has about 50 or so more reviews. This movie also has more than 500 audience reviews, though, which is certainly an apt amount of reviews, but those reviews came in very mixed. This caused the film to fare well with critics, scoring an 86% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes due to barely enough critic reviews to form a discernible average, and 56% from audiences, meaning only 56% of the people who reviewed this movie actually enjoyed it. Don't let the reviews fool you for a second, though. This movie is actually very good and a well-crafted horror flick. One thing I really like about Night Tide is the setting on a pier. The scenery is very beautiful, yet also very eerie. I don't know what it is about the seaside at night that seems creepy, but something just makes you feel uneasy. And because this film takes place on a pier, a lot of our characters work on the carnival on the pier, and so they're more used to newcomers in the form of tourists. So necessary gossip exposition coming Dennis Hopper's way comes in a natural sort of fashion. This movie is very disturbing in some ways. Some uses of lighting and frankly horrific imagery seem to do the trick very well. This movie never relies on jump scares, a cheap scare most modern-day horror movies have become reliant on in order to evoke a reaction from its audiences, no matter how fleeting that reaction is. This movie just uses good old-fashioned horrific imagery. As for the lighting, the frequent amount of darkly lit scenes do their best to, and succeed at, making you feel very uneasy. The darkness, similar to fog in other movies, creates a mysterious setting where you have no idea what's gonna happen, and that gets to you, doesn't it? Similar to Poltergeist, this movie gets away with a surprising amount of stuff while dodging an R rating. There isn't anything inappropriate shown, but it's the implication that really gets to you. For example, if you're younger than 13, I want you to skip to this time in the video. Now that the younger kids are gone, I'll talk about this now. This movie has a scene where Dennis Hopper's character is dreaming that he's kissing his girlfriend Mora, and then it looks like they're gonna have sex, but before anything is initiated, before anyone disrobes, she turns into some weird squid-like monster, and then it cuts off. So not only are we left thinking of what happens next, what sort of horrifying thing could have gone wrong in this dream, but we're also left thinking exactly how we're supposed to think in a horror movie. What if that were me? All the fear we get from horror movies is from putting ourselves in the shoes of the characters. That's why so many of the scariest horror movies have shallow characters. We relate to them the most and find it easier to put ourselves in their shoes. But because of our subconscious pessimism, We never imagine ourselves getting the better of our attacker. We see ourselves getting brutally murdered by the proprietor of the Bates Motel or by the masked serial killer with an outlandish weapon. But Night Tide actually manages to create a complex character in the form of Dennis Hopper, while getting us to put ourselves in his shoes, thinking, what was going to happen with that scene? What if that were me? And what if I were about to be, like, raped by a squid or get dismembered by a squid like monster? Be honest, that would horrify you way more than just getting stabbed by somebody wielding a gardening tool as a weapon. That horrifies me. Night Tide is an edge-of-your-seat suspenseful film. Many scenes utilize lighting or funky camera work to absolutely boggle you as to what's going on. Oftentimes, the night setting, as I said earlier, will be expertly used to highlight that you're unsure of what's happening, yet we're never jump scared. There's no hideous monster waiting around a corner to go boo! No friend behind anyone suddenly jerking them around to ask them a question. But because so much of this film is left to mystery, we're left unsure of what to expect. That's what helps ensure that we can't possibly know what's gonna happen next. My only problem with Night Tide is this unidentified woman who appears throughout the movie. She's supposed to be set up as some sort of ominous presence, a big threat to Dennis Hopper's character's safety, but she shows up a few times and then is just left to the sands of the film. Yeah, she never shows up again, and isn't really explained. There isn't an explanation as to what she was doing, and there certainly isn't much explanation as to what purpose to the plot she serves. Her presence in the story is supposed to be left as a mystery. It's supposed to keep you thinking after the film ends, but overall it just left me a bit unsatisfied. I'll give Night Tide an A. What we've got here is a really well done classic horror film, and I give it a solid recommendation to all of you. Night Tide is currently on Amazon Prime, so if you have a subscription, you should go watch Night Tide and see this great horror film. Another horror film taking place near the sea is The Lighthouse. I've never seen it, but I hear it's good, and that it's a really disturbing horror film that kind of emulates some of the old black and white seaside horror films like Night Tide. I said earlier this film gets away with some disturbing stuff. The infamous example of another of these types of horror movies is Poltergeist, a PG-rated film with no problem showing a man's face being melted off. Finally, this movie is very reminiscent of Psycho. Both are black and white horror films, both masterfully create suspense, both end with a monologue explaining some sort of twist, and both trick us into sympathizing with someone at least complicit in a murder, and both are excellent films. I highly recommend Psycho. It's my favorite horror movie and a fantastic film. That just about wraps it up for this review. Before you leave, why don't you tell me your favorite Dennis Hopper movie? I'd have to say mine is Speed. After you tell me about that, you can head on out. Stay safe and watch good movies. Bye!